want to welcome everyone to the December meeting of San Antonio Storytellers Association. My name is Mary Grace Ketner. I've been out for a while. I've been back a few months, but I've been out for a pretty long time with health issues. And I'm just so glad to be back and to be able to feel like a part of San Antonio Storytellers Association. So what we wanted to do tonight was to go through our new draft values and ethics statement and give you a chance to respond to the ideas that we have in mind. So in order to do that, I'm going to share the screen. And I should assure you that we will still have time for stories. Are you seeing it? To me, my desktop looks the same. So I didn't know if you were seeing it or not. Here is the whole statement. But as I said, we want to look through the different parts of it and look at each item and think about them or talk about them, comment, agree, disagree, however you want to do it. We seek to use stories for good, to build compassion, empathy, and understanding among listeners. You're welcome to comment as we go, interrupt, however you want to do it. We seek to elevate our art form in recognition of our role as co-creators of a more beautiful and functional future. Yes, some of you are the stars of the show. We strive to honor any culture whose stories we borrow by researching its traditions and attributes in order to present its stories in a spirit of solidarity. We strive to recount personal, historical, and other factual stories with consideration for the era in which the events occurred, but without aligning ourselves with hurtful attitudes which our world has outgrown. Y'all are quiet.
These are wonderful. Keep going.
I remember when we were adopting our bylaws, people were always so eager to get to the stories. Why do we have to do these bylaws? And we ended up doing bylaw of the month for 2 years.
So it finally got done.
This may be that it finally got done. This may be
very but similar. These are better than bylaws. I'll say that right now.
And you know what? I started teaching something similar to this to our new employees at the corporation I work at. And it made me remember that sometimes a joke I'm about to tell, I bite my tongue and go, wait a minute. You know what? I better not say that joke.
Yes.
Maybe on a Friday night around, playing cards. But in this scene here, we're coming up with a very specific way that we want to communicate our message.
Yeah.
We seek to thoughtfully approach folk tales, tall tales, fairy tales, ghost stories, legends, sacred tales, literary stories, and other narratives, and to craft them meaningfully for today's listener. I think Veronica looks so meaningful there.
And
I was just thinking the same thing, Mary Grace. I love that picture first.
We pledge to abstain from performing salacious stories, inside jokes, and any narratives that stereotype a race, gender, or gender identity, sexual orientation, ethnicity, or nationality. We will use language appropriate for our audience, which often includes children. And when it doesn't in a small room, you can be a little more broad, right?
Yes, yes.
We honor our fellow storytellers by respecting the time allowance and other directions given by the MC or host. I remember a time when I was MC at a Texas Library Conference thing, and I was introducing several people, one of whom was Mary Ann Blue. And was it Tommy DePaula who was our sort of special guest storyteller, or someone who's
Boy, I don't remember, Mary Grace. I've slept since then, I think.
You have, and so have I. But what I was going to say is I introduced whoever it was, and then Mary Ann was to be second. I think I've got this right. And I introduced her first, or maybe the other way around. And I went back and sat down by our guest, and I said, oh my gosh, I was supposed to introduce so-and-so first. And he said, as far as I'm concerned, the MC is king. Whatever the MC says, that's what we do. And I found that over the years, I found that to be the only way that a program can really work.
Yes.
The MC makes a mistake, you make it with them.
Yes.
Yeah. Was that Eric Kimmel, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yes.
I love Eric.
Steel trap, Mary Grace. Steel trap.
Mary Grace, Judi was asking if she could have a copy of our values and ethics. She feels they're kind of working on the same thing with their guild.
Oh, fabulous! I will be glad to email you a copy, Judi.
Judi, it was also part of what I sent out with the
right.
notice for the meeting.
It's hanging on the bottom of
It's
that
hanging
page.
on the bottom of it, and it's
I
real
will-
nice. And you can click on it and copy it and
Okay.
do whatever you want with it.
Okay. Thank you.
Within reason. Be respectful, please.
Oh, yes.
We stole this statement of values from San Antonio
Yes.
Stories.
Yes.
Stolen from.
From where?
From San Antonio Storytellers.
No. Oh, I thought you stole it from somebody else.
Oh no, I
you.
was saying Judi should
Yeah, I'm
give us
stealing
credit.
it.
Absolutely. You need to give credit where credit is due.
Jane, I believe NSN does have their ethics and virtues statement. We actually started there and then formed it into our own words.
Yep.
We honor our fellow storytellers by respecting the time allowance. Oh, sorry. San Antonio Storytellers Association is committed to treating storytellers, producers, and contractors with dignity, honesty, and respect.
That should be a given.
Yes.
And, you know, they all should, right?
Yep.
When you think about it, they all should. You're right. This one isn't specific to storytellers. Anyone
Yep.
contracting with someone or working with someone, it would apply. This is what we strive for, but we know we don't always get it right. When we don't, we welcome respectful feedback, knowing that we are a learning community.
I love that, learning community. Yep.
Amen.
Yes. Amen.
This was sort of a PS added by Bob Kanagas. I don't know if y'all know him. He was at George West one year, but I sent it to the Storytell listserv, and people commented, and we tweaked a little bit, made a few changes, additions. And he wrote back and he said, these are all very good, but I think you ought to have something like this. And we loved it.
Yes.
So here's the whole thing again.
Very impressive.
Very well done.
Thank you. Any other comments or?
I could stand behind that full 100%.
Very good.
Absolutely.
We can. So I think we kind of all feel that way. And did anyone think of something else that should be included? I know we're hitting you with this kind of suddenly. Well, let's move right along into what you came here for in the first place then, which is to hear some good stories. Our first storyteller for tonight is Jane McDaniel. Jane's been a part of our group for a really long time. She served as president of SASA. She served as treasurer of SASA. She served almost interminably as publicity and public relations person.
Yeah.
It's a huge job, which Mary Ann has now taken on. And the delight for us, besides just having her present and taking on some important tasks for us, is to hear her tell stories from her own cultural background. Her Irish stories just delight us every month. And I think they kind of bring out to people, that they remind people like me that when we do a fake Irish accent, like an Irish Spring or Lucky Charms commercial, that we're not really helping anybody and we're not really being true to form. So Jane, would you kick us off this evening?
You bet.
You're a good cook, you're a generous host, you're a very fine singer in a very fine choir, and let us welcome you to the storytelling stage.
Thank you. Well, I'm not 100% tonight. I have problems with breathing. So if I run out of breath halfway through, you won't get a full story. I will try though. We are in Key West at the moment. So the lighting is absolutely abominable here. We've put on all the lights that we could do. Anyway, this is a story from 1957. I was 8. Last year, Santa came to our house and he was looking for his borrowed suit. My father had lent it out because Santa gave it to him because my father said he had to use it during the work social. And they have this party every year at the factory where my father worked. So he got the suit from Santa and he kept it in a big bag on the back of the wardrobe door in Mommy and Daddy's room. And I was worried because I knew Santa needed his suit. He needed it to go out and give all the children around the world their presents. And I was afraid if he didn't have his suit, he wouldn't be able to do it. And the children wouldn't have their suits. And I asked Daddy, why didn't he give him back the suit? And he said we still hadn't had the work social, so I had to wait. And then on Christmas Eve, Daddy and Mommy went down to the pub. And they usually did that on Christmas Eve with the neighbors so that they wouldn't, I thought, so they wouldn't disturb Santa when he was bringing around the presents. So they were gone from the house and I was in bed. Mommy told me to shut my eyes and go to sleep, because then the next morning would come even the faster. But that didn't work. And I did want to see Santa when he came. And I knew he was coming that night, suit or no suit. So I took a blanket and I took 2 of my teddy bears and I went down to the living room, which was all quiet, except for the Christmas tree. And I hid behind the couch because that was where he put the presents. Well, it wasn't long before, and I was waiting, for the sound of reindeer feet. Well, I didn't hear those. What I heard was a tap, tapping at the window. And I looked up from my spot where I was hidden, and the window broke. And it got bigger, the hole got bigger, and in climbed a man. And it wasn't Santa, I was sure, or it was maybe, but this man was not quite as fat as Santa, and he had on a black tracksuit and a black woolly cap over his head, and he had a beard, and there was a bit of white in it, but I thought, that's snow from the North Pole. So it is Santa. And I said to him, I said, hey, Santa, that's great to see you. And he looked at me and he said, what? He was kind of, looking at me. And I said, you don't have your suit. Daddy has your suit upstairs and it's on the back of the wardrobe door, and I'll go get it. And then you could wear it for all the other kids. And he looked at me and he said, Santa? I said, yeah, Santa, you eat what we put out for you, and I'll be back in a minute. So I rushed upstairs and I came back down. And when I came back into the living room, there he was. He had our TV in his arms. And I said to him, well, it's not under this TV, the present, the cake, Santa, it's on the table. And he looked at me and I said, well, you got to put your suit on, Santa. And I was getting louder, and he said, shh, because I think he was, afraid that my parents were coming back, and he was being so good, to think about them. And I thought, he's a nice man, this Santa. So I gave him the suit, and he said he would put it on only if I was very quiet. So I was really quiet, but I couldn't stay quiet for long because I needed to ask him some questions about the North Pole. So I started asking him questions very quietly, of course, but just for fun. I got louder at the end of each question. I got really loud, and I could hear my parents coming in the door. And then, well, Santa made for he was having a job getting the suit on over his tracksuit, but he had it half on, and he dropped the TV back on the table and he headed for the window. And I said, oh, Santa, don't go. And I touched the window, and the sash broke on the window, and it came down and hit his head, and he was all red on his head. And I said, oh, Santa, you're hurt. What is that? And just then, Daddy came in the door, and he was so delighted to see Santa that he gave him a big hug up against the wall, and Santa slid down the wall, and he was lying on the ground. And next thing I knew, that Daddy was sitting on his head, and he was calling on the phone for help. And he looked at Mama and he said, take Jane up to bed, put her back in bed. So she took me back up to bed. And that's my Christmas story.
I love it, Jane. That was just, I can imagine that happening and you being there. So now, did you feel like it was set in Ireland? I don't even know if it was an actuality or an imaginality.
Well, it's a story from a Cork man. And I think only the Irish would go out to a pub on Christmas Eve, because normally we go to midnight mass, So I think it's an Irish story.
So Santa Claus is celebrated in Ireland.
Oh yeah.
Not Father Christmas or some of the other.
No, Santa Claus. Big deal.
All right. Go Santa. Thank you. Thank you so much. Jamie Blount has been a member of our guild for a long time. He was in San Antonio for a while, and then he moved away. And he often regales us with stories from his growing up years. Jamie, I want you to pronounce it for me. Baltimore or something. Baltimore. He can pronounce it is he there? He can pronounce it.
Jamie.
It's Baltimore, Maryland. It's pronounced Baltimore, Maryland.
And
there you go. There you go. And now he is, remind me where you're living now, Jamie.
Hendersonville, North Carolina.
North Carolina is the North Carolina branch of the San Antonio Storytellers Association, presenting Jamie Blount. Ta-da!
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can everybody see this? This is one of the most precious things I own. It has no intrinsic value the way gold or silver or platinum or precious stones have, but it's very, very precious to me. And to quote the great storyteller Paul Harvey, and now for the rest of the story. Back 22 years ago, I was working as an English teacher in Europe. I was in the Czech Republic. And a friend of mine living in Russia invited me to come and spend some time at Christmas with her. So I went downtown to the embassy and got the necessary documents, the visas and everything, and flew from Prague to Moscow. And I remember that night coming into the airport in Moscow, all that I could see, as far as I could see, was this glaze of ice on the airport tarmac. And I thought, the pilot can't possibly land a plane on ice like that. The plane will go into a tailspin. But he landed the plane on the tarmac and everything worked out just fine. Well, I had a wonderful time in Russia. I really did. I'd been to Russia before, to St. Petersburg, but never to Moscow. And I really loved it. Moscow was just beautiful at Christmas time, all lit up with Christmas trees and lights and decorations. And it was just the most beautiful place for Christmas you can imagine. And there was snow, by the way, as you probably can imagine. I remember going to an ice skating rink right in Red Square, a huge ice skating rink where people were skating. And above the ice skating rink was this big mega-sized TV showing Russian cartoons. The Russian people love children, and they've produced some wonderful cartoons for children. So I just sort of feasted my eyes on watching the skaters go by and on the cartoons above. When I was in Russia, I visited my friend Natasha, who let me sleep on her living room sofa. And while I was there, she invited me to a party at her office. She worked at the Russian Academy of Sciences in a town called Pushina, which is about 50 miles outside of Moscow. I went there, and there were some people there who spoke English, but not very many. But they welcomed me and included me in the festivities. We had delicious drinks and homemade snacks, hors d'oeuvres, and in the party, prizes were given out to various and sundry members or guests at the party, for the best dressed Christmas costume, for the best cookies, for the best wine, etc. And lo and behold, I got a prize. You'll never guess what I got the prize for. Again, this is the prize that I got. I got the prize for being the best speaker of English. Well, obviously I was. I was the only native speaker in the entire building, probably. And the people who spoke English spoke it very haltingly and with difficulty. And I thought, why would they give me this prize? I don't deserve a prize. Well, I think what happened was they weren't expecting me at all. And the prize that I got was intended for somebody else. But because they wanted to make me feel welcome and among friends, they gave me the prize that somebody else probably was supposed to have gotten instead. So even to this day, I keep it in my curio cabinet, and it is one of the most precious things I own, I'll have you know. Well, later that night, I went to a much bigger party involving perhaps everybody who worked in that particular department. But we had music and dancing and delicious food and drink, and it was just a fun time for all. And when I was at the party, one of the men with whom my friend Natasha worked said, "You're an English teacher." I said, "Yes." He said, "We would like you to have an English lesson for us tonight." I said, "An English lesson tonight? Well, here in this room?" He said, "Oh, no, we have a special meeting room off to the side. We can go over there and you can conduct your lesson over there." Well, I said, well, I'll do my best. Do you have a computer that I could use so I can get some material? He said, yes, we have a computer. So I sat down on the computer and I Googled in the 12 Days of Christmas. You know, the 12 Days of Christmas, I'm sure you've all heard and sung that before. I thought this would probably be a good opportunity to teach them an American song and also to teach them or to review with them the difference between ordinal numbers and cardinal numbers. You know, ordinal numbers, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc., and cardinal numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So hopefully they'll learn something or review something they've already learned, learn a new song, and maybe learn a few words along the way. So I downloaded the 12 Days of Christmas, made copies, stapled them together, and invited all of the individuals into the room to learn the 12 Days of Christmas. Well, they had to go through some torture. They had to listen to me sing the song so they'd know how to sing along with it. So I sang it for them, and then they joined me and sang along too. And we talked about, what does it mean, turtle dove? What does it mean, a piper piping, a maid, 8 maids a milking? Well, a maid, you know, a young woman milking a cow, if you will. So we went through quite a lot of new vocabulary. And yeah, we all had a pretty good time doing that. We really did. So later in the evening, after the English lesson, a couple I had met earlier said, "You're going to be going to Moscow in a few days, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, I am." "Well, our daughter will be going to Moscow on the same bus you'll be going on. We would like you to sit next to our daughter, and so she can practice her English with you." It's not every day she has somebody from the US to practice English with. Well, I said, well, yeah, I'd be delighted to. So she was a beautiful young woman who spoke pretty good English. We just sat and talked the whole way to Moscow, had a wonderful time together. I really felt very at peace, very, very loved, if you will, by this group of people. You know, when I was a boy growing up in the Cold War, where you learned about the evil Russians, the evil empire that Ronald Reagan described it as, and here I was breaking bread with the enemy. How bizarre, I thought. This is not at all the way that I was brought up. And here I am with these Russians, and they're welcoming me, making me feel very much at home. Wow, this is super. I'm really feeling very good about world peace, about how we can turn swords into plowshares and really find some good things that have happened beyond the time when we were arch enemies with one another. I felt really very warm and fuzzy inside, very much so. And I thought, you know, I hope I get to come back here again sometime. I really do. But I haven't been back. I haven't been back sometime. I'm reminded also of a time when I was a much younger man, and I traveled to Europe for the first time back in 1972. I was newly minted, college graduate from University of Baltimore. And I was naive and young in my youth. And I thought that I was going to go out there, the world would just be waiting at my doorstep to hire me and give me a job. Well, of course, that didn't happen. But what really humbled me more than anything else was when I went to Europe and traveled around various places, many people asked me, why is the US in Vietnam right now? Why are you fighting a war in Vietnam? I said, I don't know. So your country's at war and you don't know why? And I said, yes, I think that's the reason for much of the protests going on right now. We don't know why we're fighting a war, yet we are fighting a war. Well, were you in Vietnam? No, I was able to get a student deferment. I didn't go to Vietnam. I was able to legally stay out of the war. I remember riding on a train one time. I was in Spain. I spoke a little Spanish, and I still do. And a Catholic priest who was sitting opposite me in the carriage just reamed me out up one side of the carriage and down the other for our presence in Vietnam. Well, I listened to him, and he got over it. And then later, we became pretty good friends. So I played the part of an American in Russia who felt very welcomed, very at home, very at peace with the Russian people. And then I went to Europe, Allied ground, if you will, where I felt scorned, not just in Spain, in Great Britain, in Norway, in Germany, in Denmark, in many places. Being an American wasn't cool back in those days. In fact, many Americans at that time didn't say they were Americans. If anybody said, "What's your nationality?" they said, "Canadian." Oh, okay. In fact, a lot of people, Americans and Canadians both, wore Canadian flag on their sleeve, verifying that they weren't American, to avoid the chastisement that Americans got because of Vietnam. So talk about irony. The Russians received me very warmly, the Europeans not. Well, of course, a lot has changed now. I wonder if I were to go back to Russia today, would I be received warmly? I don't know. A great deal has changed since that time. Russia's at war with Ukraine. We're supporting the Ukrainians. Would I be seen as the enemy? As a spy? I don't know. I don't think I'm going to go back there anytime soon. But I will say I love to travel. I always have. And I've learned that when you travel, you represent your country, whether you like it or not. And it's best to put your best foot forward and to be the person you are and to show respect and honor and love for the people who are hosting you, as much as they may not like you being in their country. So I will say Christmas in Russia, one of the best Christmases I ever had in my life, where the Christmas spirit I felt really permeated my whole being. I'll never forget those days. And I'll never forget my first visit to Europe and to Great Britain, and how I wasn't beaten or spat upon, but many people had some questions about the American role in Vietnam. And I had to discuss it with them, whether I liked it or not. So anyway, that's traveling. It has its good, it has its bad, but all in all, it's very, very worthwhile doing. And I think anybody who wants to experience a different part of who he or she really is needs to get out of his or her comfort zone into a country far, far away where people don't speak your language very well, to let you discover who you really are. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jamie. People are just people everywhere, aren't they?
Sure.
When you talk to individual people, they're just people. And Malvonia, I hope I'm saying it right. I wish we had an award to give to you for being our new guest tonight. Even if it's a little trivet or whatever it was that you were holding up.
I've enjoyed it. I'm enjoying listening to you all.
Wonderful. Thank you. Judi Tarowski, I have just wondered how she found us. Judi is in the West Virginia branch of the San Antonio Storytellers. And she was a newspaper reporter and an editor before she was a storyteller, or I think they went in that order.
Yes.
And it's interesting to me that her stories seem to focus on local history of her area. So I'm kind of wondering, Judi, which came first, the interest in local history or the reporting?
Actually, through the reporting, I was able to learn different things about the area and these little hidden stories. So that's kind of how it evolved.
So they kind of grew up together a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. Well, do you have one of those stories for us tonight? And if you have a different kind, that's okay too.
Well, it's kind of a historical story in a way. It's a legend. Thanks to our former pastor, the late Monsignor Robert Punke, told me a legend about a tabby cat. And it was just a brief narrative on his part, but I thought, maybe it needs to be expanded a bit. So as a storyteller, I just took the liberties of expanding on the legend of the tabby cat. It was a cold night. It was dark. The streets were quiet. Most everyone was inside where it was warm. And the inn was quiet. All the guests were settled in for the night for their stay. But then that quiet was disturbed when there was a young couple appeared at the inn, and there were voices, not particularly raised, but there was a discussion. And the couple then was directed across the alleyway to the stable behind the inn. And there the animals had settled in for the night. They had been fed and watered, and they had been sheltered, safe and warm for the night. When the couple entered, they searched for a clean place where there was some straw, and the woman was in labor. And she lay down there on the straw, and within a few hours, there was the cry of a newborn baby. Well, the woman didn't want to stay there on the floor of the stable. She wanted to find a place that was clean and warm and safe for her baby. So she began to walk around the stable to see maybe if the animals would give her a place to place her child. And the first enclosure she approached was where the chickens were kept. And as she approached them, they turned to her and said, no, you go away. You just get out of here, because if you come in here with that child, we're going to have to go outside and there's something there that might eat us. No, you just go away. So the woman shrugged and went on in the stable, still searching. And the next enclosure she came to was where the goats were kept. And when she approached and asked if she could place the child there with them, they said, no, we have important work to do. We produce milk and cheese for the inn. Our owner takes very good care of us, and if you bring that child here, we'll be disturbed, and we won't be able to do our work properly. No, you move on. Well, the woman was saddened by this greeting, but she kept moving there through the stable till she came to where the camels were housed, and these were the great beasts that belonged to the rich men staying in the inn, and they had beautiful, luxurious blankets on them, covered with jewels and fine embroidery. They were elegant beasts. And when the woman approached and asked if the child might rest with them, they turned and spat, said, no, we belong to the richest, finest men in the inn. We will not have commoners like you among us. Move on, woman, move on. Well, the woman was quite saddened by this, but she kept moving through the stable until she rounded a corner. And there, in the middle of the floor, was a manger where the animals would feed. So surely she thought this would be a good place to put the baby, maybe some nice, clean, sweet hay there for his bed. But as she approached it, she looked down, and there was a tabby cat curled up asleep. And when the cat realized the woman was standing there, he awoke and he jumped up onto the side of the manger, and he looked at her and he said, oh, dear lady, please put the child here. I know, I saw your face fall when you saw me. And it's true, I'm a cat, and by nature I am cruel and selfish, but please, dear lady, put the child here. Because you see, of all the animals here in the stable, I alone am allowed in the inn. And many a night I have lain there by the fire and listened to the guests talking. And if I have heard stories about a prophecy that there would be a baby born who would bring peace on earth and eternal life to all mankind. And dear lady, I'm a cat with 9 lives, but would eternal life be for me as well? So please, dear lady, put the child here, and I will guard him all night to make sure no vermin approach. And also, dear lady, I know that this is a special child, because when I came out from the inn tonight, I looked up and there was a star in the sky I'd never seen before. So when you approached and when you came in, and that baby cried. I knew this was the child of that prophecy. So please, lady, put the baby here, and I will keep guard. So with that, the woman smiled, placed the baby in the manger, and the cat jumped up onto the side of the manger and sat there on guard, watching. And the woman reached down and very gently stroked the cat on his head. And that is why, to this day, every tabby cat has an M on its forehead. It's a reminder of the gratitude that the Virgin Mary showed that faithful tabby cat on that holy, holy night. I thank you for the listen.
Oh, thank you, Judi. Now, as a cat lover, I was not surprised that that cat was willing to be the guardian of the Christ child.
Thank you.
Well, we have a kind of, I'm just excited tonight that I'm going to get to hear Sue tell a story. I know I see her quite often. I don't get out much, but I see her here quite often as our emcee and introducing each of you, but less often getting to be the storyteller that she is. Sue has been part of SASA for maybe 30 of our 31 years. Sue, does that sound about right?
I'm old.
Oh, no, it's not that. It's just that you're an old timer without being old. But when she first came to us, Sue was already involved in storytelling because she was a librarian and had also been a teacher. And starting before and then all through the rest of the years when she was a career educator, she always had storytelling clubs at whatever school she was at. And whether she was a teacher or whether she was a librarian at that school, storytelling has always been at the very heart of what education can do for children as far as Sue is concerned. And it's something I came to admire in a whole different way. I mean, I had always loved stories, but I don't think I realized how they fill children's hearts and how good kids can be in telling stories. So I don't know if that has anything to do with the story you're going to tell us tonight, Sue, but it's something I just wanted people to know about you.
Thank you so much, Mary Grace. So sweet. And now I really feel old. Yes, 28 years of having storytelling clubs. So it's just so wonderful. This story really, I would say, applies to everyone. I think kids, adults, and much older folks, I think should love this very short tale. But to my heart, I love it. I did first hear Liz Weir tell this folktale. What I love about this particular folktale is you can take this out of Ireland and place it right here in Bulverde, Texas, or in San Antonio, or in West Virginia. So if you like it, please share it too. It's so wonderful. Once there was a farmer and his wife, and looking out their window, yeah, they noticed, my, oh my, the cow that we have, who gave milk, the hens that we have who would give eggs, the pigs in their pens, the horses in their sheds. That was our farm. But oh my, looking out our farm window, the wife spoke to her husband and said, "Oh, look how run down our farm is, husband. It's just depressed. We can't even grow the crops that we could grow even 3 years ago. What are we to do?" Well, her husband agreed. And looking out the window, of course, they both became quite depressed themselves. For sure, nothing was working out for them. And even for dinner. And dinner for them during the day was right around lunchtime, for they still worked as hard as they had when they were younger, but times were different. They had potato soup and a little bit of milk, which they had watered down from the cow. But while they were sitting down, an old man with no money, it seemed, because he was dressed in rags, why he knocked on the door and walked in, for that was the way back in the day. There were no locks on doors. And he came in and looked and asked if he might share some food with them, for he too was hurting for food. And of course, the husband and wife invited him in and sat him down and shared what little they had. And they had a few sprigs here and there of carrots and just pulled those out of the ground and washed them. And they all shared alike. And it was the farmer and his wife who told their story of how this farm has been in their family for years and years and years. But as they could all see, it was just so run down. They looked at all the fence posts that were either down on the ground or falling. What was holding them up was no longer there. So old. Nothing was being kept where it needed to be kept. The hens, there were no eggs. The cow just looked so sad. There were no more horses. There were no more sheep. And they could see just the weeds growing in the fields. Now this older man, he sat and he listened the whole time. And when they were done, he stood up and he thanked them for the meal that they shared and the conversation. He said, I might have something that could help. And he pulled out of his pocket a lump of gold. Well, the farmer and his wife looked at that and he said, please take it. Maybe it will do some good here. And thank you so much for sharing your meal with me. And he was gone before they knew it. Well, the farmer's wife said, what are we going to do with that? And the farmer said, I know exactly what we're going to do with it. We're going to bury it right there in front of the hearth. For you see, back in those days, there were no floors like we have. They were earthen floors. And that's exactly what they did. They dug a hole and they buried that lump of gold. And it was the wife that said, I bet we can buy some lumber and whatever other tools you might need to fix those fences out there so that we can gather our animals once again. And the husband looked out that window and he said, I think we're good. Out in the shed, I have lumber that's just been waiting to be used. And we never call on our neighbors. And this conversation we had just at our lunchtime, it makes me feel we need to reconnect. I think we're good with the lumber. Now, wife, I think I can go out into town and buy you at least 10 more hens and a rooster to wake us up in the morning. And the wife looked at him and said, I was just thinking about that. We don't need any hens. You know what we need to do? Just go on out to the hen house, wash it down real good and throw some fresh hay in there. Let those chickens know that we're thinking about them. And my friend Dolores, she would love to help out. Nah, we can leave that alone. But husband, I think we do need a new cow. we're just not getting any milk from this poor one. I think it may just be all gone. The husband wouldn't even let her finish. And he said, just like you said, wife, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to rub that cow's belly, and I'm going to comb our cow's hair. I'm going to sing my best songs at night and tell that cow my favorite stories, just like I used to do. And maybe the folks around here from the farms down the road, they may want to join in. Well, before they were done, it seemed like they had solved all the problems of their farm just with that conversation. And what I love about this stories is that I can say time went by. In fact, a whole year went by. And the husband and wife, they were fixing a meal for dinner, for true dinner in the evening. And as they set down their plates, who should walk in but that older gentleman who was still dressed in the same rags. And he walked in, and he did seem a little bit older, but he asked for an invitation to share a meal with them. And of course, the farmer and his wife sat him right down. They could not wait to talk to him. Why, it was the husband who spoke up first. He said, it was because of you, sir, that this farm, as you can see, has just changed its ways. You can see. And of course, the older gentleman looked out that window, and he saw that the fields were filled with crops, and that the posts were all standing up for all the fences to be to hold the animals in their pens. He saw that there was even a wonderful looking crow to go ahead and wake them all up in the morning, and the hens looked like they were enjoying that hen house. My goodness. And boy, not only was there a cow, there were 2 calves in the field. My goodness, thought the gentleman. I'm wondering how you spent that lump of gold, because it's obvious you have turned this place around. Well, the farmer and his wife, they glanced at each other. And then they looked at him and said, it was because of you. But we never touched that lump of gold. Why, all we needed was just a little bit of inspiration. And that conversation you had with us helped us and reminded us that we're not here alone. We have friends. We invited them over, and before we knew it, not only did kinship spark up again, the story started, the music started again, the animals were happy, and we became quite happy. And that older gentleman said, so you didn't use that lump of gold? Nah, we just needed a wee bit of lift. Well, the older gentleman stood up and he thanked them for a great meal and a wonderful conversation. And before he turned, he said, might I have that lump of gold back? For there might be another couple on down the way who could use a wee bit of lift themselves. And it was given to him, and off he went. And that wee bit of lift is something we can all have. And now I've given it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. It's kind of all in your perspective, isn't it?
Truly, truly.
I'm wanting to take a deep breath. Maybe you'd like to take a deep breath too. Well, Nathan, I'm so glad we have time for another story. Nathan is our Georgia chapter of San Antonio Storytellers. And he has a special treat coming up. For Christmas, he's going to get to go and see his brother in Chicago. And for us South Texans, Chicago in December sounds like a real challenge, but he says he's ready for it. So
yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.
Well, we'll just see. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Now, you're all probably familiar with this story, but I've changed it up just a little bit, and it's set at Christmas time. It was the day before Christmas, and there was a very busy railroad yard in a town on one side of the mountain. All sorts of engines lived at this roundhouse. Big old steam engines, sleek new diesel engines, shiny passenger engines, huge bulky freight engines, rusty, dusty old engines, and one tiny switch engine with a tall smokestack. On this day in the railroad yards, a train full of fuzzy pets rolled in. The car was loaded with kittens and puppies and bunnies and hamsters. It was being pulled by a small steam engine. And just as soon as the train arrived in the railroad yard, the engine broke down. The engineer of this train full of pets was a young girl with long honey blonde hair and blue eyes. When her engine broke down, she began to cry bitterly. Big tears rolled down her cheeks and washed away her smile, for this was a truly terrible thing to see. "Oh, I must get this train full of pets on the other side of the mountain. They're bound to have new homes for Christmas this year. They will be so disappointed." After a while, her tears stopped falling. "Crying won't get this train full of pets on the other side of the mountain," the girl said to herself. "Maybe I could find someone who will help me." Just then, a shiny diesel engine rolled into the yard. The girl saw her first chance. She walked up to the engine. "Please, Mr. Diesel Engine, sir, will you pull my train full of pets on the other side to the town on the other side of the mountain? They must have new owners for Christmas. They must have new homes for Christmas." But the shiny new engine was very mean, and he snorted. "I wouldn't think of pulling a beat-up train like yours over the mountain," he said. "I am a passenger engine. I have just pulled a fine train of passenger cars clear across the country. My train had sleeping cars with comfortable berths, a dining car where people were served wonderful meals, Vista Dome cars where people could sit in soft armchairs and look out the scenery through big plate glass windows, a baggage car, and an observation car. I wouldn't be seen pulling a train full of fuzzy animals." And with that, the diesel engine sped off into the roundhouse. The girl began to cry again. After a while, she said, "I must maybe say, if that engine won't help me, then who will?" Just then, an enormous freight engine rolled into the yard. The girl, "Please, Mr. Freight Engine," the girl asked, "will you pull my train of pets on the other side to the town on the other side of the mountain? They must have new homes for Christmas." The freight engine had a very loud whistle, and he blew it derisively. "Huh! I have pulled hundreds of box cars loaded with furniture, tank cars loaded with oil to power the big machines, hopper cars filled with coal to the power plants, flat cars loaded with lumber, livestock cars full of cows and horses to the farms, refrigerator cars loaded with fruits and vegetables, gondola cars loaded with gravel to help build the roads, double-decked automobile carrying cars, and very important machinery cars and cabooses. I would certainly look very silly hauling your dinky little train of fuzzy little animals. I wouldn't think of it. And with that, the big freight engine puffed away. The girl stepped back. She started to cry again, but she had run out of tears, and so she didn't. Instead, she walked right into the roundhouse, and there, sitting in a corner of the roundhouse, was a rusty, dusty old engine. The girl took heart. Maybe this engine will help pull her train. And so she asked, please, kind old engine, kind rusty old engine, will you pull my train over the mountain to the town on the other side of the mountain? These pets must have new homes for Christmas. But the rusty, dusty old engine sighed. Oh, I can't possibly. I'm not well, you know. I have spots under my headlights and my whistle's broken. Listen. Very of my wheels are cracked, and I know I could never make it over the mountain. So I'm sorry. I just cannot, I'm just too weak to pull trains anymore. Just then, into the roundhouse puffed the little switch engine. Once again, the girl asked for help. Little blue switch engine, little blue, will you pull my train over the mountain? Will you pull my train to the town on the other side of the mountain? These pets must have new homes for Christmas. The little engine said, I am a very small engine, as you can see, and I have never been out of the railroad yard. They only use me for moving freight cars and coaches around the yard. I've never even been over the mountain. It will be an adventure, said the girl, and you will make the animals on board very happy, and as well as all the people living on the town on the other side. The little engine thought for a moment. If the train didn't get to the town on the other side of the mountain, the pets would not have new homes, and the people would not get any new presents for Christmas. And so she said, yes, I will do it. I think I can. I hope. This made the girl very happy. And so she climbed aboard, and the little switch engine hooked up to the little train of fuzzy animals. And then they started off. The going was easy once they're on the flat land, but when they started going up the hill, it began to get rougher and tougher and tougher and rougher. But all the while, the little engine kept saying, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I hope. Presently, they came to a rickety-stickety old bridge spanning across a deep canyon. That bridge doesn't look safe to me, said the little switch engine. I'm sure it's all right, said the girl. And so, very slowly and carefully, the little train inched its way across the bridge. But halfway across, the bridge began to sway and tremble. And the little engine put on a burst of speed and sped all the way across the bridge. And once they were on the other side, and just as they made it to the other side, the bridge broke into a million pieces and collapsed into the canyon below. Whew, that was close, gasped the little engine. Then they started off again. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I hope. After a while, they came to a long, dark tunnel. It was filled with smoke. I'm afraid, oh, I'm afraid to go in there, said the little switch engine cried. That tunnel's full of smoke. There could be another train in there and we will have a wreck. No, said the girl, the signal is green. It's safe to go ahead. And so, tenderly and gingerly, the little train inched its way into the long, dark tunnel. I am lost in this darkness, said the little engine. Oh, you can't go back now, said the girl. There's only one way to go, and that's ahead. After a long time, the little engine slowly could see the light at the end of the tunnel. They were so happy to be when they got out of the tunnel. Up ahead, they could see the top of the mountain, and they were almost there. Suddenly, from the trees behind the railroad track, out stepped a big burly moose with large antlers on top of its head, and he stood right in the middle of the tracks. Please step aside, Mr. Moose, said the girl. We have to get this train of pets to the town on the other side of the mountain, and it's almost Christmas. The moose grunted and lowered its antlers. It was getting ready to charge, and the little engine was so frightened that she began to back up down the track. Stop, said the girl. I have an idea. Go up to the moose again. And so, ever so cautiously, the little train crept up to the moose. And then the girl engineer hopped down from the little switch engine and walked and out of the rabbit's car. The girl pulled out a long new orange carrot. Then she walked up to the moose and said, I will give you this nutritious, delicious carrot if you will let the train pass. This made the moose very happy, and he took the vegetable and stepped right off the tracks. Hooray, cried the little blue engine. We are clear once again. The girl engineer hopped back aboard the engine, and they started off once more. And then once again, the little engine kept saying, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I hope. And just ahead, they saw the top of the mountain. And this time the engine said, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And inches there, she said, I know I can, I know I can, I know I can. And they chugged and chugged and chugged until at last they reached the very top of the mountain. Down in the valley below, they could see the big city with all the Christmas lights and trees twinkling like stars in the night sky. Hooray! Hooray! The little switch engine and the girl engineer both cheered. And this is the song they sang as they started to go down the mountain. This train went over the mountain. This train went over the mountain. This train went over the mountain. And look what we can see. The town on the other side of the mountain. The town on the other side of the mountain. The town on the other side of the mountain is all that we can see. And so the little train began to make her descent down the long, steep mountain. And this time she said as she sped down the tracks, I thought I could, 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 I thought I could. And faster, I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought I could. And until at last they reached the little station in the big city. And the little one, once they pulled in, the little switch engine but tooted her horn triumphantly and said, I did it. I brought the train of fuzzy little pets to the town on the other side of the mountain. the girl engineer hopped off the switch engine's cab and said, "Oh, thank you so much, little switch engine. Because of you, you brought these cute, adorable little animals to the town on the other side of the mountain, so now they will have new homes for Christmas." And she kissed the little switch engine on her cheek, and the little engine's cheeks and face turned bright red as a red signal light. And the children and the town all gathered round to welcome the little switch engine. And the girl engineer opened the doors to all of the cars and let all of the animals out. And now, she said to the animals, run out and choose and pick a boy or a girl, and he or she will be your new owner. And so all the kittens and all the puppies and all the bunnies and all the hamsters scurried off the train, hurried across the station's platforms and into the arms of all the children, and the little pets got their new. And that's my story.
Oh, thanks, Nathan. Nathan is certainly a nostalgic story for all of us. It was actually 18 minutes, though, so really more like 2 stories. So let's just close by wishing everybody a Merry Christmas, a very happy holidays as you celebrate in whatever way your family gets together and celebrates. And thank you all for telling Jane, Jamie, Judi, Sue, and Nathan, and for coming, Susan, Chester, Mark, Malvonia, Marianne, Karen, Laurie. See you next year.
Thank you so much, Mary Grace.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Holidays to everyone.
Happy New Year.